for attending. So I'll just briefly chant Jai Radha Madhava, which is our custom since the early 70s, about 71, 72, when Srila Prabhupada visited Gorakhpur. And it was there he introduced this beautiful bhajan by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which perfectly describes Vrindavan, Sri Vrindavan Dham, and glorifies the residents, the cows, the Yamuna River. So we will chant that. Is the sound all right? Yeah?
Yeah, it's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Jaya Hari Hari. So everybody please also sing along as if you're in the temple. You may be some of you in the temple, but your home is also a temple, and participate in the class. So one more time. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Hey. Jaya Om Shri Vishnupada Paramahansa Paravajakacharya Satara is His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya, our Lord and Master Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. All glories, all glories, all glories to the assembled devotees. And all glories to the lotus feet of Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. So if you have your Gita or a device, again, it's Bhagavad Gita, second chapter, 32nd verse. And the word by word, Yadrishchaya, by its own accord, cha, almost. Upapanam, arrived at. Swarga, heavenly planet. Dwaram, door. Aparvritam, wide open. Sukhina, very happy. Kshatriya, members of the royal order. Partha, O son of Partha. Labhante, do achieve. Yudam, war. Idrisham, like this. Yadrishya kopapanam. Swarga dwaram apavritam. Sukhina Kshatriya Partha Lavante Yudam Vidisham Yadrishaya Kopapanam Swargadwaram Apavritam Sukhina Kshatriya Partha Lavante Yudam Vidisham. O Partha, happy are the Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors of the heavenly planets. Purport by His Divine Grace. A supreme teacher of the world, Lord Krishna, condemns the attitude of Arjuna, who said, I do not find any good in this fighting. It will cause perpetual habitation in hell. Such statements by Arjuna were due to ignorance only. He wanted to become non-violent in the discharge of his specific duty. For a Kshatriya to be in the battlefield and to become non-violent is the philosophy of fools. In the Parasara Smriti, are religious codes made by Parasara, the great sage and the father of Vyasadeva. It is stated, the Kshatriya's duty is to protect the citizens from all kinds of difficulties, and for that reason, he has to apply violence in suitable cases for law and order. Therefore, he has to conquer the soldiers of inimical kings, and thus, with religious principles, he should rule over the world. Again, the translation, O Partha, happy are the Kshatriyas for whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors to the heavenly planets. Om Ajnanatimmirandasya Janana Sakalaya Chakshum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Varavani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavari Paskachire Satarine. Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Srivasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu Vaivyacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So, considering all aspects, Arjuna had no reason to restrain or refrain from fighting. You know, he gave all these wonderful reasons, and especially why he wouldn't fight. And I can say for those of us in the 60s, for the first time, pretty much Arjuna's side. We were in the midst of a ridiculous war that had no good reason to be fought, and so many young people were being sent off and killed. And it wasn't even on our own soil, it wasn't even about our own country. So in this situation, there were reasons on both sides if you looked at it. But there is only one side for a devotee, and that's Krishna's side. And therefore, we must always try to understand everything from that point of view. Prabhupada mentions that, and Krishna also confirmed, if he conquers his enemies, he would enjoy the kingdom. Although Arjuna was saying, no, I wouldn't be able to enjoy the kingdom, if I had to kill my relatives, etc. But he was reminded, you would enjoy a kingdom. And should he die in battle, then he would be elevated to the heavenly planets, whose doors would be wide open to him. So in either case, Prabhupada pointed out, either case, there would be benefit. So it's the duty of the Kshatriyas to see that everyone is executing his proper professional or occupational duty. Kshatriyas are the administrators of a society, of a country, nation, city, etc. And so it is their duty to see that everyone is properly executing their occupational duty. It said, swadharmam mapi, shavek shiksha, that very important. And Prabhupada was pointing out in his purport, which was over 50 years ago, at the present moment, there is no swadharma. Just imagine now, 50 years plus later, what hope for swadharma. But of course, that is something for us to try to implement, introduce, and at least make people aware of. So therefore, according to the Vedic injunctions, dharmena hina pashubi samana, that one who is not executing his own religious principle, no better than an animal. So who will see? Who will see that everyone is discharging his occupational duty? So this swadharma means that the occupational duty, and that duty is the government, the king, the government. So in the beginning of one's life, it's the duty of the father and of the teachers to train children in the principles of swadharma. And it's the duty of the brahmanas to see that their sons, their daughters are being properly trained up as brahmana. Satyam samadamastiksha arjavam brahma karma swabhavahadam. So Bhagavad Gita 18:42, that everything is there. The brahmana should be taught how to become truthful, first of all. A brahmana would never speak a lie at any cost. And it's stated that even if the enemy would inquire something from the Brahman, something confidential, he will say, yes, this is my position. This is truthfulness. He'll not even lie to his enemy. He should always be truthful. Even the Kshatriyas, they're also truthful men. And truthfulness is so valuable. And this truthfulness actually makes one powerful. Satyam, this truthfulness. And Prabhu gave a nice example of how a Brahmana is recognized. This Satyakam, this young person, he went to Gautama Muni. Probably you've heard this narration, the story that, sir, please make me your disciple. So according to Vedic principle, without becoming a Brahmana, one cannot be accepted as a disciple. In our society also, we don't accept a disciple unless he's Brahmanically qualified. Before initiation, the Brahminical qualities must be there, and those basic qualities are the no meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication. Every member of ISKCON who is initiated, we take these vows, and hopefully everyone's taking them very seriously, and these vows are Brahminical. So the Gautama Muni, he says to the boy wants to become his disciple. All right, who is your father? The boy says, well, I do not know. I'll ask mother. And when he goes to his mother, the mother informs him that even she doesn't know who the father is. So you can understand maybe she had some kind of an unusual occupation. So he goes back to Gautama Muni and he says, my mother does not know who my father is. And when he told that to Gautama Muni immediately accepted him as a disciple because he was truthful. I had a small experience as a young devotee in San Francisco in early 1967. There was a very powerful newspaper there. I don't know if it's still there, but it was called the San Francisco Examiner. There were two papers, they were rivals, so the Examiner and the Chronicle. So the society page editor somehow heard about our little temple and about the devotees, and she showed up at the temple. And as I was there, I just got a message, Examiner's now closed, probably for all their bogus news. Anyway, the lady came to the temple, she met me, and we started to speak. And then during the conversation, I mentioned to her about the regulative principles. And she's looking around the Haight-Ashbury where our temple was. She's seeing all it just filled with hippies who had no principles. And she's seeing, myself and a few others who were in the temple at that part of the day. And she was surprised. You follow those? You do all that? And, we were just starting out. And I paused and I said, well, actually, we're trying. Because I actually couldn't truthfully say, yes, we're following this. But mostly everybody really was trying. And because I was honest and I gave an honest answer, she actually became very impressed. And she thought, oh, these people, they're good people. And she wrote a very, very wonderful article. The title was Malati and Her Dancing Gopis. But it went to all the readers, and it was on the front page of the popular part of the newspaper. So being truthful is never something one should shy away from, particularly as devotees. There's no harm, as we could see by this little analogy with Gautama Muni, by saying, I don't know, So unless one is free from sinful activities, how can one become a Brahmana? Brahmana means suchi, cleanliness. And others, they're called kripana, are muchi. That's our ISKCON word, muchi, unclean. Suchi means always cleanse, suchi, cleanliness. So baha vyayantara suchi, inside and out. Outside by taking bath, that is external cleanliness. And then similarly, there's the internal cleanliness that one must rise early in the morning, evacuate and take bath and chant the Hare Krishna mantra, see the Mangala Arti. And in this way, one has to purify oneself internally and externally. Please forgive me for a minute, but I have to adjust the oven. I'm baking a cake. Yeah, sorry, but I didn't think it was going to take so long, so I threw it in and then I found out it was going to take longer. So purify internally, externally. Arising in the morning, and devotees, initiated devotees, should always make their pranams to their spiritual master, to Srila Prabhupada, and take, clean teeth, take baths, etc., and then chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And Mangalarti, whether in the temple or in your home or online. It's so easy nowadays, actually, So God consciousness is not a cheap thing. There's Yesham Twanta Patam Papam Jananam Punya Karmanam. That one who is completely freed of all contamination and material modes is Anantagatam Papam, means sinful activities. They can stick to the principles of devotional service. Otherwise, when one is not free from the contamination of sinful life, one can try to make a show of devotion, but it's not actually devotion. Prabhupada explained that's called bhakti abhasa. It's a shadow, it's an imitation. So these things should be observed, that a Brahmana's duty is to present himself as an ideal human being, satyam, samo, dhammastiksha. This tiksha means toleration. Like, oh, it's very cold, I can't take baths. But of course, now we have hot water, but in some cases, especially long ago in India, in some areas it would be very cold. We had that experience during Kumbh Mela, living in Vrindavan, very cold, and there was like no heating system, and the water was very cold. So we could think, oh, the New Vrindavan during the winter in the early days, and they had to crack ice just to get the water to take a bath. You can imagine what kind of bath that was. Very fast bath, actually. But still, there was no question, oh, it's too cold, I can't take a bath. No, we must tolerate, just tolerate. Actually, when I was living in Paris, and also at the farm, Nouvelle Mayapur, so there would be pretty cold winters. And then for the ladies' bathroom, there was a broken window. So the snow would come in, or the cold wind would come in, and the shower was right by that broken window. And, simply tolerate. But, having that austerity was actually very valuable. And we embraced it, but it wasn't easy. This titiksha, tolerate. And then arjavam, simplicity. Jnanam, full knowledge. Vijnanam, practical application. This jnanam, vijnanam, astikyam. So this astikyam means completely convinced of God and one's relationship with God. That is called astikyam, our full faith in the statement of the Vedas. So whatever the Vedas say, that is correct, that's right. No argument. Astikyam. If you don't understand, then you ask the appropriate questions to try to understand. And similarly, Kshatriya. Kshatriya's duty is Kshatram li jatam cha paraspara ratam, that the Brahmanas will examine whether the Kshatriyas are doing their duties nicely. Just like Parsuram, when he saw that all the Kshatriyas had become rascals, he wanted to kill them all. In fact, 21 times he killed them. And Prabhupada was explaining that some of those Kshatriyas, because they started to flee, when they saw what was going on, they started to run away. But some of them fled from India. They left India and they came to the Western countries, European countries. And therefore, Prabhupada explained that the origin of the Europeans were Kshatriyas. And he specifically named Turkey, Greece, other countries also. So it's the duty of the Brahmanas to see Kshatriyas are nicely doing their duty. And similarly, the Kshatriya's duty is to see where the Brahmanas are also doing their duty. So the Kshatriyas at that time were actually not needed to see that the Brahmanas were doing their duty, because the Brahmanas were so advanced, they were beyond examination of the Kshatriyas. But another duty of the Brahmanas is that people should be spiritually educated. They don't personally do the education necessarily, but they see that that spiritual education is implemented. That's the Kshatriya's duty. Or the king is looking over the citizens to see that they're properly trained up, just like in some secular states at the present. Secular means that Prabhupada describes this. Secular means that you can do all nonsense and you don't care. We don't care. You pay my tax. You pay me tax. That's all, income tax, and then you can do any darn thing and go to hell. It doesn't matter. So Prabhupada said that is not secular. Secular state means the state must be very vigilant whether one is doing his duty, that everyone is employed in his duty. In other words, they won't have unemployment. They won't have unemployment benefits. Like nowadays, the unemployment benefits outweigh the possibility of a salary. So people are not inclined to get a job because they have some unemployment that is giving them a very good income. We're experiencing this in New Vrindavan, where we have many opportunities for employment for during the spring, summer, fall season, but nobody is coming to work, because why should they work? They get from the government this unemployment benefit. And in outside, if you go to town, I see everywhere, every business has a big sign, hiring now, that every business, every single one of them. Nobody can get work. We were supposed to have some new housing built, because we need housing here for devotees, right? Found a contractor, had gotten a good estimate, and this was before the COVID. Then the COVID hits, and now the COVID has come down. So go back to the contractor. So are you ready now? And the contractor says, I cannot do anything. I cannot get any workers. The only workers I get are drug addicts, alcoholics, or crazies. I can't get any reliable people because they make more money from their unemployment. So this is a pathetic condition, and actually it's the government's fault. Government is supposed to see that people are employed. The Brahmin is employed, Kshatriya is employed, Vaishya is employed, and otherwise, if they're not unemployed, then the old adage, an idle brain becomes the devil's workshop. And this is happening because everyone is not employed, Then Prabhupada was telling okay, then they discovered the machines, factories, whatever, and the machines are working with hundreds of people's work. So then actually 100 men are unemployed because the machine has taken over, and it hasn't improved the situation at all. Prabhupada said it improved the pocket of the capitalists, but it's not improved the condition of the mass of people unemployed. So therefore, in the Western countries, because of these machine and industrial, so Prabhupada was speaking this at a certain time, but it's interesting to know. He says, therefore, they're producing, the Western countries, because of the machine and industry, they're producing the university of hippies, thousands of unemployed boys and girls. So the whole thing is topsy-turvy because there's no good king, no good rulers. And so the whole battlefield, Kurukshetra, was arranged by Krishna so that these irresponsible rogues dressed as kings should all be killed. And that was Krishna's plan. And we had the example of Duryodhana. So Duryodhana dressed like a king, but actually he was a rogue, and he cheated the Pandavas by gambling. you bet your wife, you bet your kingdom. And in this way, because the Pandavas were actually simple devotees, he cheated them. So Krishna wanted that these cheaters and rogues should be killed. That was his plan. So that's why Yaratraya Kopapanam Swargadvaram Aparvitam. Arjuna, you're hesitating to fight. But it's a great opportunity for you because as a Kshatriya, if you kill these cheaters and rogues, there will be a great achievement for you. And even if you don't kill them, if you yourself die, you'll go to heaven. The heavenly door is open for you. Because it said that a Kshatriya who dies in the battlefield with one point, Kshatriya who dies in the battlefield for the right cause, that's an important part here, he goes to heaven. Because we know there's other, such as the Muslims, they also have people, they send people to fight, like suicide bombers and like this type of people willingly, they put themselves on fire because they're told, oh, you'll go to heaven, you'll enjoy all kinds of pleasures. There will be hundreds of thousands of virgin girls. That's what they tell them to get them to do these atrocious acts. But there is no justification in terms of the right cause. So Prabhupada made that point that Kshatriya who dies in the battlefield for the right cause goes to heaven, and not that kind of heaven as I just mentioned. And if he conquers over the enemy, then he'll enjoy the kingdom. So, but the cause must be right. That's the point. So there's Yarachya Kapakanam. So this Yaram means a political fight. Just like in Prabhupada gave the example at the time, and we have so many examples now of countries just like butting heads. You could say America and, one North Korea, China, different, I guess, Iraq, Iran, all these, there's butting heads, fighting, always planning of fighting, and Prabhupada said that's political. And he used the example of India and Pakistan. He said when a Pakistani government cannot manage, nobody's managing nicely, neither Pakistan or Hindustan. In other words, neither country is managing nicely. And such that was, at that point, and we have the same thing now. So then what they do, they'll divert their attentions with some kind of, so-called religious slogan, like Hindus are our enemies, or the Pakistanis are our enemies, the Iraqis are our enemies, But Prabhupada was saying that this so-called nationalism, this slogan, this is not anything that's positioning anybody to fight or act for the right cause. So then he also was talking, he said that he mentioned how in Europe that there were the two wars, referring to the two world wars, and they were arranged by the German people who were envious of the English people. So those wars, they were definitely not righteous wars. They were the play of the diplomats, the politicians, just like we find today. So when they can't manage things nicely, then they engage people in war. They divert attention, and then they create an economy based on the war, based on fighting, etc. But the war isn't meant for that. War is meant for when people are not properly trained up by the king or the state. Then the king can attack. So the ideal situation, the ideal state means that the king must be very responsible. And he gave instances like Maharaj Yudhisthira. He was a pious king. And he gave a Bengali proverb. So maybe one of our listeners know this. Rajar dose rajanasto dose grahasta brashta. So means something like if the king is not pious, the whole kingdom is spoiled. He gave another example. Similarly, if the housewife is not good, the whole family is spoiled. So everyone has experiences one way or the other. So the king must be honest, pious, and religious. And sorry, 1 minute. Okay. Well, I'll never try to give a class and cook a cake at the same time again. That does not work. I thought it was going to be done before the class, so that's why I dared do it, but it didn't work out that way. Sorry about that. So the kings must be pious, they must be religious, they must be honest, and therefore they're called Rajarshis, that although they're a king, they're also should be like a saintly person. And the example was of Maharaj Yudhisthira. They were saintly Rajarshis. Imam Rajarsho Vidu, that sometimes, and he was giving, Prabhupada was giving an example of how sometimes these ISKCON members are accused that we go to preach among the richer section. We seek out educated people. So, of course, the richer section, there is no king, but Prabhupada was explaining, actually, the Bhagavad Gita was meant for the richer section, the Rajarshis, who used to control, for the kings, because if the king's educated nicely in spiritual affairs, if he knows what is the purpose of a kingdom, what is the purpose of ruling, then all the citizens will also automatically become religious. They will understand their purpose. And if the king is a rascal, if the leader is a rascal, then naturally all others will follow. They'll also become rascals. We know that verse, that what the if you have a person who's a powerful person, well-known, famous person, whatever that person does, then the common man will follow. So if you have good leadership, and this also, by the way, we're talking leadership in terms of, in this case, in terms of like maybe the state, the city, the nation, but we can filter it down. Our temple requires good leaders, our temples, because the leaders of the temple, they're guiding the community and teaching the community how to become Krishna conscious. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 4th chapter, you'll find that Krishna was teaching, first of all, Imam Vivashyate Yogam Proktavanaham Mavayam, that he was taught this philosophy first to the sun god. And initially there were 2 Kshatriya families, from the Surya Vamsa, that's from the sun, and then the Chandravatsya, one coming from the sun, the other family coming from the moon god. So Krishna said, because the sun was the principal man in the Kshatriya family of Surya Vamsa, so he taught that first. So Maharaj Iksakshu, he was the first king in the dynasty in which Lord Ramchandra took birth. Very pious family. And so Prabhupada was pointing out, you mentioned that the worship of Lord Ramchandra began from Maharaj Iksakshu. Maharaj Iksakshu, he used to worship a deity of Lord Ramchandra. She said Sitaram. And therefore, in the family of Ramchandra, this deity appeared. And Prabhupada said that deity is still existing in some part of South India. The same deity that was being worshipped in the family since Maharaj Iksakshu. And when Lord Ramchandra was personally present, that deity was kept in his bedroom. So then there's an incident where there was a Brahmin who used to come daily to see Lord Ramchandra. Not sure daily, but he would come often. And he would come to see Ramchandra, and then he would take breakfast. That was his habit, his regular principle. So one time Lord Ramchandra was absent for a week or so from the kingdom. And this Brahmana, during that period, he would not even take a little water, because he could see Lord he couldn't see Lord Ramchandra. And Prabhupada commented, such a devotee, such a personality. So then Lakshmana, he was informing Ramchandra, here's a devotee. You're gone. You were absent for 1 week, and he didn't even take not even a drop of water. So Ramchandra was quite pleased, and he ordered Lakshman, you give him this deity, which was being worshipped in our family, but now that worship has stopped, so you give him this deity. And in this way, he delivered the deity to the Brahmana. And with the instruction, when Lord Ramchandra is absent from the kingdom, then you can worship. You know? So if we cannot see Krishna physically, although Krishna is present everywhere, and due to our lack of proper vision, we have no eyes to see him, but therefore there is deity worship. If we're not seeing Krishna physically, we have the opportunity to see him through the worship of the deity. And Prabhupada pointed out this is not idol worship. The deity is as good as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His absolute, his form, and him are non-different. This quote from the Madhyam Lila, this Abhinatvam Namanamino, that Abhina means identical. So Prabhupada said, we're chanting Hare Krishna, not that like a recording. We are associating with Krishna. Tvam Namamina, by chanting Krishna's name. Krishna is present on our tongue. And unless we realize it that way, then it's called this period of nam aparad, that we'll likely be committing some offense. And of course we do here, okay, well, when you chant that this Lord is dancing on your tongue, it's said like that, and probably most of us are like, when will that happen to me? One time there was a little girl, devotee girl, so she heard this, she was chanting, Krishna's standing on your tongue. And I saw her standing in front of the mirror like this. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So she had her tongue out, chanting, looking for Krishna on her tongue. So, of course, Krishna can dance on your tongue at any moment, but the best is if we understand that the name Krishna is different. The name of the Lord is non-different from the Lord. In our own case, the name of the person is not the same as the person. And Prabhupada gives the experience in the material world. The name is different from the substance. If you want to drink water, simply if you start chanting water, 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 the thirst will not be quenched. But in the spiritual world, the absolute world, the name and the person is the same. Otherwise, why stress so much importance on chanting Hare Krishna? In the Shastra, we have beautiful Harinam, Harinam, Harinam eva kevalam, Kalona Steva, Nasteva, Nasteva, Gatira, Anyata. This is in the Adi Leela. You can read this, 1721. So this is Shastric. But there are many rascals, and they give the example. They'll like, oh, what is this chanting? What is the benefit? I can chant soda water, soda water, soda water, or whatever I like. But they don't know what is the injunction of Shastra. And actually it's happening. They're blind. They have no spiritual vision. And Prabhupada would say, how do these European, American, African boys and girls, simply by chanting Hare Krishna, they're becoming purified? Unless there is spiritual potency in the chanting, how are they becoming purified? The chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra has got the power, it has got the potency. And of course, Lord Gauranga, Cheto Darpanamarjanam Bhava Mahatavagi Nirvapanam Shayakarava Chandrika Vitaranam Vijavadujivanam, that everything is there. It's a formula, Prabhupada said, it's a formula. And if we follow the regulative principles in the injunctions of the acharyas of the Shastra, then we will get success. Otherwise, we may labor unnecessarily wasting time. Ya Shastra Vidum Uchya Vartate Kama Karataha, that 1623, that one who does not follow the regulative principles mentioned in the Shastra, this vidam means regulative principle, means they're living whimsically, doing whatever one likes. And one may find so-called spiritual teachers, so-called spiritual swamis, who sanction, yes, whatever you like, it doesn't matter, you can do. But Prabhupada said, that is nonsense, Swami. Visyatomata tatopata. You can manufacture your own religious principle. No, it's not possible if you want to have real success. So Shastra Vidim must be observed that if one violates the religious principles mentioned in Shastra, then he's not going to get success. This nasa siddhim avapso nina sukam. No success, no happiness. So what to speak of going back home, back to Godhead. Prabhupada made a heavy statement. He said he'll rot in the material world. So this Shastra Vidim, the direction of the Shastra, is given to different castes and orders of human society, and everyone is expected to follow the rules and regulations. That makes for an orderly society. And if one does not follow and acts whimsically, just go in according to this lust, this greed, this desire, then one will not be able to perfect their life. So, in other words, a person may theoretically know these things, but if they're not applied in our lives, then such a person is known as the lowest of mankind. It's Naradharma, lowest. So Shastra Vidim is required. It must happen. From the Parasara Muni, he has one Shmiti, Parasara Shmiti. And of course, we know Parasara, he was the father of Vyasadeva. And he had his regulated principles. These are realized souls in Vedic principles. And they wrote so many books. So in the Parasara Shmiti, it said, Kshatriyohi prajarakshan shastrapani pradanandayan. So this shastrapani means always with sword in hand for the benefit of the prajas. Means be so strong. Even we have in India the powerful Sikh community in northern India, and if you go there, you'll see that even today, because I have seen many of them, they are wearing swords around their waist. Most of them nowadays, they just take a little symbolic sword and they may keep it in their turban or something. But there are ones, they wear their sword. They're an Kshatriya, I'm ready to stand for you. Even ladies, I have seen them. They walk with their sword around their waist, ready to stand up. So why is the sword? For the benefit of others. For the benefit of others, one should be strong. And Prabhupada was giving an example. Oh, you're a thief? You've stolen? Immediately, hand would be cut off. Prabhupada said this one example would stop millions of thieves to commit stealing. And he was saying at the time, it was about 100 years ago, now maybe 150 years ago, the system was actually prevalent in Kashmir. They had such a strong governmental standard. So if a thief was arrested and it would prove he had stolen, the king would immediately cut off his two hands. The king took that action. So Prabhupada, this is government, So therefore, it's that that injunction that always must be strict. In the Manusmriti, it said that if the man is a murderer, then you've killed a person, then that person must be killed. And not Prabhupada said, why just person? An animal, even an animal. If he's killing, then he's a murderer. But then he was pointing out, now we know like murdering is practically not an offense. Why? Because they're killing daily so many babies in the womb through the abortion, and then hundreds and thousands of animals daily in the slaughterhouses. It's become a custom. So not even human being who commits murder now is not even condemned to death. And this death is not out of some false sentiment or anger. It's to actually benefit the person from committing further activities of the same nature, and also to stop their suffering, so that otherwise in their next life they're certainly going to suffer again. So in the the idea of this, of capital, is called capital punishment. It's actually a form of mercy. It's a form of compassion. But nowadays, of course, how can you show compassion when the whole situation is a total meltdown and deviation from any religious principles? But still, there's this kama charata. So that means a person who knowingly violates the rules of human society, then they act in less. It means they know what is forbidden, but still they act whimsically. Knows what should be done, but still does not do it. Probably we all have that experience at some time, We know we should do a certain thing, but still we don't do it. Not that we go out and commit murder, but that is called whimsical behavior. When you know what is to be done, but you don't do it. And then such persons will be condemned by the Supreme Lord. We can't make spiritual advancement. Prabhupada explained that this means everyone is sinful. Basically, when you know what is to be done and you don't do it, then everyone is sinful. The government's sinful. The persons are sinful. So then how can we expect happiness? And Prabhupada described it as a fool's paradise, a sinful paradise. How can you be happy? So in spite of all types of so-called education, scientific improvement, brainwash, and so many things are going on, people are unhappy, diseased, unhappy, dissatisfaction, confusion. All this is going on because everything is not being properly carried out, because the government is no longer strict. In the Manu Smriti, if the man commits murder, he should be killed. Otherwise, as mentioned, suffering in the next life. It's the king's order. It's the king's duty. And that is the mercy of the king, to save the person from future troubles. Formerly, the government was given by the king. The judgment would be given by the king. So the king would sit and people would be brought before him. And Prabhupada said in that time, there was basically no criminals practically. If there was a criminal, it was difficult to find a criminal because these 4 things were being followed. They were prohibited: no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling, no meat eating. And if one follows these principles, then naturally he's automatically sinless. So if the whole population is sinless, then where's the possibility of judging or bringing the criminal, people will be naturally pious. And of course, Prabhupada, okay, I see it's now 12:28. Anyway, I'm almost finished. I'll run a little over. So he gave an example. Of course, we know the example of Kali. Kali was ordered by Maharaj Pariksit. He was Maharaj Pariksit pulled out his sword. He was ready to break him off. As soon as he saw that person going to kill the cow. Oh, you're in my kingdom. You're trying to kill a cow, and he took his sword. I'll kill you immediately. And then that Sudra, he fell down. He goes, the Sudra, who was dressed like a king, like false person. So, oh, sir, I'm your subject, and this killing is my business. So what can I do? I must have some means of livelihood. So yeah, okay, the butcher, that's his means of livelihood, is to kill animals. So then the slaughterhouses is closed. Then one might be thinking, oh, there'll be so much unemployment. The butcher must have a chance of killing. That's his livelihood. But this is not law. Oh, the butcher must have employment. No, the slaughterhouse, they must be closed if we're going to expect any peacefulness or happiness in the society. So this Maharaj Pariksit, he was saying, you cannot live in my kingdom. I cannot provide you with any employment. You must get out. And at the same time, he was the emperor of the entire world, the whole planet. So then when he's telling him, hey, you go out, where's he going to go? He's at, where shall I go out? Where's that place? So then Maharaj Pariksit considered, okay, then you can remain in these 4 places. Striya Shuna Tanam Dutam Yatra Papas Chaturvida, where there is no illicit sex, where there is illicit sex, brothel, prostitution house, you can remain there. Slaughterhouse, are unnecessary, where animals are unnecessarily being killed, you can remain there. And this Shriya Sunapanam, and intoxication. So where there's liquor house, you can remain there. And where there's gambling, you can remain there. But he found it very hard to find those places, very difficult to find those places. But now in age of Kali, the whole planet is such a disrepair that everywhere these activities are going on. So this system of human civilization, as conceived by the Vedic process, is completely different from the rascal, I'm using Prabhupada's language, rascal civilization at the present moment. Be happy, it's not possible. And then he made a very interesting point. At the same time, it's impossible to go back to that type of civilization because people have become so polluted. It's not possible. And therefore, the only means is enunciated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu from the Brihad Naraja Purana, this Harinam, Harinam, Harinam Eva Kevalam, Kalona Stevan Steva, the Steva, the Tiranyata, that you take this process, you chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and at least you'll become purified and you'll understand the situation. And if you follow the rules and regulations, these simple things to avoid, the 4 principles to avoid sinful life, and chant Hare Krishna, then you surely will be able to go back home, back to Godhead, and be eternally happy. So this is some of the points. Anybody would, again, I'll just say the verse was, O Partha, happy are the Kshatriyas, to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors of heavenly planets. There's some questions, okay? And
Yeah, thank you, Mother. Yeah.
I just have to turn my stove off now. I think the cake is done, I hope. Well, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mata. So many amazing points in the discourse. I don't even know where to start. So we have Rukmini Mata. I think she wanted to have a question. Mata, Prabhu, you have a couple of minutes for questions, or is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay. Rukmini okay. Now Rukmini can correct and give another class. And she's so knowledgeable.
Hold on. Yeah.
Haribol, thank you so much for the class, Malati Prabhu, and yeah, that was very important points that you brought up, and particularly you were speaking about how the importance of the regulative principles in society, and so and you told that story about the newspaper interview, and so I looked up. And I don't know if this is the same newspaper interview or a different one, but Hayagriva Prabhu wrote a book in which he referred to. So if you don't mind, I'll just briefly summarize what he said about a society.
Was that from Hare Krishna Explosion? Probably.
So the title that is given in this document is Birth of the Hare Krishna Movement. So I don't know if that's the same. It's an early version of the same book, or if it's a different book, but that's the title.
Do you have it in front of? Do you have it in front of you?
Yes.
Can you show?
Sure. So the file title is Hare Krishna Explosion, so maybe it is from there. But let me see if I can share my screen then. Let me share here.
He wrote 2 books, Hare Krishna Explosion and Vrindavan Days.
Oh, well then it's definitely the former. Are people seeing it?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Is it very small though? I mean, I can try to make it bigger.
Oh, it was from the Chronicle. For some reason, I was thinking it was Examiner.
Well, I mean, so you could correct this, like he could also be mistaken about something, but, so I didn't want to, so basically, he says here that there was then an invitation from these people,
Yeah.
the Thompsons, and then they were basically sort of
Yeah.
drunk. And then
Yeah.
at the very end, so let me go to the very end
See what
here.
happened? What happened in that article? She had said that that people could call us, contact us, and we would go their place, and that's what happened. And these people were very, they were quite wealthy, you
Mhm.
know. They had a gate, they had you had to get admitted. There was a guard, a gatekeeper, and when
Mhm.
we came up with our really crappy cars, they were like, what are you? So then they're calling the main house, so yeah, it's okay, let them in.
Yeah, and I mean, according to Hayagriva Prabhu, they were expecting only ladies, so they were surprised that there were also
Yeah,
gentlemen in the party.
yeah,
So coming to the last, that they were basically a lot of drunk people. So this is his view of it, that he found it to be, after a minute we're interrupted by a drunken, belligerent old man. I don't know if you can see my cursor.
well, I
Uh,
can't. I'm using my phone, so it's
oh,
the
oh,
it's
okay. So
it's
so
like, now I turned it so it's a little bit bigger. I can see it.
okay. So
Yeah,
I'll just read the last part, which is that, so basically they had expected that you were there to entertain them. They didn't have the idea that that
yeah,
kirtan is for glorifying the Lord. So then
yeah,
at the very last paragraph, he says, "You should not chant or explain the mantra before such people," Swamiji tells us afterwards.
yeah.
Actually, Krishna tells Arjuna that Bhagavad Gita should be explained only to the pious. Of course, now in Kali Yuga, people are mostly in passion and ignorance, so if we preach just to the pious, we'll have no audience. It is Lord Chaitanya's desire that this chanting be preached in every village in the world, and his desire is the purpose of ISKCON. So we are preaching to the hippies, but we need not attend the parties of drunkards." End quote. So this seems to be a bit of a subtle point because, like, for instance, I mean, maybe we wouldn't necessarily encounter a party, but we might, be in a park where there's just a lot of people drinking or smoking marijuana, and they think that, we have some nice music. So how do we distinguish? Like, of course, we'll meet these people who are not following, and the whole point is to tell them, so that then they can improve. So how do we
Yeah.
how do we distinguish whom to speak to, and in what circumstances? That's my
Well,
question.
um, oh, I just lost the screen. There you are. Yeah. So, um, well, to quote Prabhupada, who answered um, a more or less similar question, trying to, how we distinguish, how we determine. He said that requires some intelligence. um, but what to do nowadays? Everybody, practically speaking, is the mind's, we already know this manda sumanda, the mind is always disturbed. So you take a person with a disturbed mind and add some intoxication, oh, and you have a recipe for a perfect disaster, you know. But still, I mean, we have to go on. That was the case. That was the example by Lord Nityananda when him and Haridas Thakur went after Jagaya Madai. They knew that those two were totally unfit persons, but as he said to Lord Chaitanya, this is the people you've come to save. You know. So in the same way, we were also totally unfit persons, and Srila Prabhupada, by his extraordinary mercy, came to save us. And of course, then it's up to us to remain saved. In other words, Not that you jump in momentarily, get your feet wet, and then jump back out again. It happens, so often. But there was an incident in Pittsburgh where Prabhupada was taken to, it might have been Carnegie Mellon, but the students were just not attentive. And so finally, Prabhupada cut their speech short because he just saw they weren't attentive. And he told the leader, have kirtan. And even they were not able to participate in the kirtan. So then that was stopped. You just give them prasadam. Now that worked there, but nowadays we'd probably even have a hard time, what's in this? Is it vegan? Is it this? Is it that? Is there sugar? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's very difficult to preach in Kali Yuga. The principles of spiritual life and the mundane world view are at total odds with each other.
So in that case, is there any value in speaking about the regulative principles separately?
Well, you wouldn't, I would say that probably it might not be the first thing you're going to tell such people. Let them get a little taste, whether it's for prasadam or chanting, or just a taste for the friendship of devotees. When then you get to a point where they might try to listen to you, and then you can drop it. But I mean, we have to tell them, even they don't like it, but we have to tell them. Otherwise, we just be another set of cheaters. Yeah, to do whatever you like. It's okay. Doesn't matter. All paths lead to one. If Prabhupada cheated us like that, just to just to make us happy, we wouldn't be here. So the truth has to be told. How you present it, when you present it, at what point in the conversation do you introduce it? That's where some little intelligence and some sensitivity is required.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Are you in a public situation?
No, I'm at a friend's house.
Okay.
I'm visiting her.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. So, any other questions, Prabhu? Anybody else had any other question? I didn't see any hands.
No question, but I have a comment.
Go ahead, Prabhu.
So thank you, Malati Prabhu. So it just make me remember. So you talked about Arjuna's confusion based on the Swadharma.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was hearing another lecture who was also saying that he was also confused with Swabhava based on his nature. He's the reason he was basically talking about two platforms. One is Swadharma, which he already talked, and the other is Swabhava. Both are material. But then Krishna brought him to Swarupa, which is eternal nature as a soul. So then he spoke about it. That was a very interesting point. I just wanted to.
Yeah. I would just like to mention to persons that this week the GBC members had a meeting. It was a out of consequence meeting. It was a special meeting called to discuss the situation in Mayapur with regards to the devotees and to COVID, and also in our Bangladesh ISKCON temples. As a result, and not only did we discuss Mayapur and Bangladesh, but all the other temples gave their report, the leaders of the other temples. So the other temples, even though there may be some struggling going on, which there is, but still they're able within their own communities to handle it. But Mayapur being so vast and Bangladesh being so largely isolated, those are where the main struggles are. So there is an effort I posted. I hope it got received by the Temple Council. Did you get that? I forwarded.
Yeah, we got it. We got it. Actually, in fact, there was a discussion about new temple, our own new temple discussion also. Leela Manjini Mataji started asking few options, which we'll be discussing eventually. Thank you.
Okay, well, this is not something to be discussed eventually. This is something that needs to be discussed now, and see what your community, how they can do it doesn't, we're not saying, hey, millions of dollars, we're just whatever can be offered. in a collective manner will be effective. Even the TOBP is contributing 25,000 towards the Mayapur project. So everybody can kindly add something. Then, you know, there will be some, you know, it's not all on one community, one person, but by contributing each one as they can, then it will become effective. And we should be anxious to do whatever we can to help. And I also want to make a point that you might have seen videos in Vrindavan and Mayapur, particularly where people were not wearing masks. And so many of us, myself included, objected to this. Like, you know, okay, we understand they need help, but what is the point if they're not going to follow the protocol, distancing, you know, masking, etc. So the leaders there have taken swift action on that and have promised that they are going to enforce protocol, especially in Vrindavan. They've buckled down, and in Mayapur, they have definitely started to reverse the situation where people were crowding together without any masking.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare
Hare Krishna. Any other questions, or do you have anything from Malati Prabhu, please? No.
Otherwise, I'll take your leave and thank all of
Thank
you.
you. Thank you, Malati Prabhu. It was amazing discourse. And thank you for your last part regarding COVID donations also. We really appreciate that.
Yes.
And hopefully things will get better. So
yeah, I just keep in mind, you know, every little bit will actually help. And
yes,
collectively, by collectively, it means, you know, all of the temples in North America, all of the temples in Europe, all of the temples in Africa, everybody is coming together on this. And that way we can be successful. Hare Krishna.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll go ahead with our local announcements. So, and so I have only a couple of announcements. The next Ekadashi is on 5/7, that is on Friday. And so if any of you can help with the Kirtans, which will be generally from 6 to 9, please send me your name so that we can have the Kirtan. And then the next big festival is on 5/25, Lord Narasimha Dev Appearance Day. That's on Tuesday. And we will send out more details via email on that day. So these are the two main announcements I had for the day. If anybody has any other things to share, you know, please feel free to share. Otherwise, we'll take a pause today at this point. Any other, Prabhu, any other announcements, or are we?
No, the only thing is that now maybe the TC we should meet as soon as possible about because we need to forward that GBC to community. Also, if they want to contribute and they can give to a temple or maybe one concerned person, we collect. We'll also chip in whatever we could do. We collect as a big fund. Whatever we collect, we can send it to GBC. They can send on behalf of Columbus.
Sure, Prabhu. So Chandra Prabhu, I think you will take care of that, right, Prabhu?
Okay, Prabhu.
Initiate the conversation within the TC first, and then.
Yeah, and I was reading in some emails also, like a lot of things are happening in India in the sense that temples are trying to follow all the mass social distancing. In fact, they are having multiple events so that people don't gather at one place. So a lot of things are happening in India also. They're trying to have all those precautions. So very nice, Prabhu. I think with this, we'll take a pause today. And we'll see the Vaishnava Pranam. We'll end with Vaishnava Pranam. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyavacha patitanam bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrindaki.